What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. In today's video we're going to be making a triple Damascus slicer or a brisket knife. Now the reason why I wanted to make a brisket knife is because when I was making this build a few weeks ago, it was right about to be 4th of July and I was like, man, I should really make a brisket knife. But unfortunately I did not have enough time to do that, so I ended up making it out of a different material, but that did not become a video. Regardless, halfway through this build I was doing a standard chef's knife and I was like, you know what, I should make a brisket knife. So I ended up switching over my attention and now we have this build. Now, as some of you may know, you've been following along, I've been trying to work on different patterns for triple Damascus, but since this particular knife is so small, it is really difficult to get a pattern on it, so I decided to just make it a random Damascus knife versus trying to put any kind of patterning on it. And in the process of making this knife, I learned a lot and I messed up a lot as well. Pretty much, I doubt I'll make a knife like this again anytime in the near future, just because it's just too much of a hassle for the end result. Though I did like the end result, it was a bit of a pain and it still did not come out perfectly how I wanted it. And that's just what happens when you are a bladesmith and you're experimenting with new types of styles, materials, all that stuff. But that's what keeps this fun, because if not, then I would be doing the same thing every single week or bi-weekly as I've been doing it lately, and that would be a snore. So with my initial billet forged out, I went on ahead and cut it into 3 and we are restacking. The reason for this is so we can have a higher layer count, and a higher layer count makes random Damascus a lot more interesting. For this billet, I think I went into the 200s for the layers, and that makes for a very interesting and very random pattern. Though if you're looking to make a less random, more like a raindrop or ladder, definitely a higher layer count helps as well. Alright guys, so I've taken the billet and I've cut it into 4 equal pieces. I'm going to be working with one of them today, and we're going to be making a random Damascus knife. With my other pieces of steel already separated for previous and future builds, we're going to go ahead and start concentrating on this little guy right here. And this is more than enough material to make a very nice long knife, very nice and flexible depending on the thicknesses that I end up using. In this case, I think I forged it down to 1/8 before I did any grinding, so it was relatively thin. Now, the main problem I had on this build was that thinness. Had I known I was going to have so many issues with it, I would have left it a little bit thicker, though the knife would have ultimately been smaller. Once you get to a certain thickness, whenever you're grinding, whenever you're doing anything on it, the knife likes to warp. It absorbs heat so fast and it warps so fast. So I definitely had a long battle with that warping. So what I'm doing here is I am concentrating on the tip. I'm trying to get that tip to form on that knife. That way afterwards I can go and start stretching it out on the hydraulic press. I like to do this first by hand. That way I can really get it trued up the way I want it, because once you get thinner on the material, it's really a pain to be forging such an aggressive tip on it. And it tends to like to bend over or twist, so I like to do it while my steel's still pretty thick. So here I'm isolating the tang. This knife will be a hidden tang knife, so I'm slowly working my material and my tang material, getting everything roughly where I want it. And here's when I decide that I want a longer knife instead. So I start cutting back on the thickness of the knife. I think my ending thickness was like around an inch on the heel, slightly over an inch. So I definitely did taper it a lot aggressively. So I end up making something of a fillet knife. And it's something I've never done before, so I thought it'd be fun to do that. And here I'm using the new dies that I made, and I'm just slowly working that steel, getting the shape that I want. This new die does come in handy, especially when I want to isolate certain spots, and I personally like it. I can see why some people wouldn't. It does kind of move everywhere, but at the same time it's moving the way I want it to move. So I definitely overall like the way this new die is working, though I do have to pair it with a bigger die versus the smaller die that I made in the previous video. It just works better that way, so that's the route I've been going. At this point we're pretty much there on the knife. All I have to do is really true it up and make sure everything's nice and straight, which is very difficult on a knife this size. Previously I have done a sword before, so it's not really about the size of the knife, it's about the thickness of the knife. On a sword we leave the spine a lot thicker, which really holds everything together better. In this case we don't have that thickness in the spine. So on this knife, I pretty much forged everything pretty close to shape. I did not want to forge the tip in more than what I did, simply because I wasn't really sure how I wanted the tip to be, and also I didn't want to over forge the tip and then end up with a really thin, kind of wonky tip. So I figured it was a safer bet just to leave it a little bit thicker, a little bit more bullnose like, and then just grind the tip in wherever I felt it needed to go. So here's a look at the knife. We have it hand sanded up to 800. We're gonna start working on the handle. For the front part, I'm gonna be using a piece of black paper micarta, and for the wood, we're gonna be using a piece of canary wood that I had stabilized. So far, the handle portion was a lot simpler, a lot easier. I feel that over the past few months, since I transitioned more to doing hidden tangs versus doing full tangs, I've gotten a lot better at doing them, and they are a lot easier to do. But I think if I was to make another knife, I would definitely go full tang versus hidden tang, and that is because the thickness of the knife is so thin that it feels like it's too flimsy on the handle. Though, in all honesty, you're not going to be trying to chop down a tree with this kind of a knife. This is more for like fine cutting and maybe some filleting. But regardless, it feels kind of thin, even though it's definitely long enough and wide enough. But it just has to do with the flexibility the knife has overall. I do think I'm going to challenge myself to make this kind of knife again in the near future. It'll probably be mono steel or Damascus, doesn't really matter. But I will be challenging myself to make it even better, probably with a thicker spine, and just work it down to a thinner bevel, and I think I would get a better end result overall. So what I'm doing here is I am prepping to bed the tang, and the reason why I do this is so I have a perfect fit of the tang inside of the handle. As you can see, I drilled the handle holes a lot thicker or bigger, wider, and that is because it lets me be able to get a better perfect fit overall than if I was spending a whole bunch of time just trying to dig out that material for any kind of thickness of a tang, honestly. So I like to make a thicker hole and then fill it in with epoxy, and then once it dries, because of the wax on the tang, it pulls out and leaves a cavity in there that's exact shape of the tang, and that keeps it from wiggling from side to side. That way I can take pretty accurate measurements so I can shape my tang exactly the way I want it, versus having it wobble around, and then when I do my final glue up, it goes in all messed up, it wobbles a little bit, and then that ruins all the work and all the measurements I've done before, and that has happened to me before. That's why I like to take this extra step. Since I am using 5-minute epoxy, it's been like 2 or 3 minutes, and the tang comes out nice and good, nice and easy thanks to the wax. The way I measure when to pull it out is I check how dry whatever's left in the cup is, and if it's nice and dry or semi-dry, I like to pull it out. And with my handle done, all that's left to do is etch the knife. So now all that's left to do is do our glue up. As you can tell, I am using some big old giant bottles of 5-minute epoxy, and the reason for that is because I'm mixing a lot more because I have that giant cavity in there. But I don't know if this was a blessing or if it wasn't, but I actually ended up dropping my tang or my handle, and it hit the ground and broke, which gave me access to that cavity a lot easier. Though it does make it a pain to fit everything back up. I have to do a lot more hand sanding afterwards on it, but it let me fill that cavity and make 100% sure that it is filled up. So I believe that was a blessing in disguise. This is the way I should have done it from the very beginning, but since I was working with 5-minute epoxy, it ended up it would have dried on me before I mixed another batch to fill it up all the way. And just part of the video, I'd like to ask you guys, if you like the video, be sure to like the video. If you like what I do, be sure to check if you're subscribed. A lot of you guys aren't, and it's a free way to help support the channel and get the video out to more people. Also, this knife will be available for sale on my website. It is not perfect, but I'm sure somebody still wants it, since I've had a lot more issues on knives before, and I end up keeping them and people keep asking for them. So I figured I'd put this guy on the website, and if somebody wants to pick it up, they're completely free to pick it up if they want to. And if nobody picks it up in about a week or two, I'm gonna keep it for myself because I kind of do want it. Though, a big disclaimer for anybody that buys anything from me, these knives are handmade, so none of them are really perfect. If you want perfect, buy machine made. They definitely come in a lot nicer when they're CNC'd and they're made perfect. But overall, this knife came out great. I love the way it came out. It's super thin, it's super flexible, and it's super sharp. And this is the first time I make a slicer that is, I believe, 12.5 inches long. And it's a very nice knife overall. I found that the triple Damascus makes the knives a lot grayer because of the different kinds of steels. One becomes darker and one becomes a little bit more grayish, and the other one becomes even lighter gray. And overall, I really like the pattern it ends up giving. Nonetheless, thank you very much for watching, guys. I really appreciate your support, and that there is a little bit of curve. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate y'all, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.